to a brand new hour of CBS Sports HQ. Jenny Dell here on a Monday afternoon. College football is right around the corner. Before we know it, our whole crew will be out at the Big Ten Media Days out in Las Vegas. But things in the Big 12, well, they are getting underway. The Big 12 Football Media Days taking place Tuesday, July 8th, Wednesday, July 9th at the Dallas Cowboys Global Headquarters. The coaches, along with some of their top players, they're going to be ready for us on display, getting ready for the 2025 college football season, which is right around the corner. And when it comes to the Big 12, a lot of questions in this new look conference. And for some of those answers, we are going to welcome in one of our experts. We have Shehan Jeyarajah joining us now with some of the biggest storylines heading into this college football season, specifically looking at the Big 12 here. Arizona State trying to do something that no Big 12 school has done since 2020, and that is win back-to-back Big 12 titles. Last time it was Oklahoma doing that. Can we just expect maybe a humble confidence this week from them?
Well, I think the funny thing about them is that last year was kind of ahead of expected. Like, you look at this roster coming back, so many of the guys on this roster were expected to be more year 3 contributors for Kenny Dillingham than year 2. I'm looking at guys like Xavier Alford at safety, Sam Levitt at quarterback, Jordan Tyson at receiver. These are all guys who are going to be among the best at their position in the entire country. So they have high expectations. Now, I will say the Big 12 got rid of their media poll, but I think that Arizona State would have a very good chance to be atop it after winning the Big 12 last year.
There's another team that feels like they might be right up there, and that is Kansas State. We have our true junior quarterback, Avery Johnson. He says he learned from his mistakes of his sophomore season. He's expected to really show some production in 2025. Kansas State, the co-favorites to win the Big 12. What's your outlook there?
Yeah, I think that they, first of all, belong in the conversation every single year with what Chris Kleiman has built over there. But this has the potential to be a pretty special season for them. You mentioned, of course, third-year quarterback Avery Johnson. He's heading into his second year as a starter. He is somebody who schools across the country look for his services. You know, Tennessee reached out to him whenever the whole Nico Iamaleava situation went down because he's a big-time player. He was a top 100 recruit coming out, one of the best players ever to commit to Kansas State. And in his first year, you saw some of the flashes, 25 touchdowns, 2,700 yards passing, but also 12 interceptions. That's something that he really wants to clean up from his game and give Kansas State a chance to be one of the best offenses in the Big 12. So they belong in that top group most definitely, and it's going to be up to Johnson whether they're ultimately able to get there.
They belong in that conversation. A question about Utah, whether they belong in the conversation. You know, you have such a veteran coach in Kyle Whittingham. You look at last year, so it was Kyle Whittingham at Utah, Oklahoma State, Mike Gundy, just veteran coaches out there, both picked to lead teams who were supposed to compete atop the Big 12 last season. The Utes were supposed to win it all. Then they go 2-7 last year. Can they turn things around?
Well, it's fascinating, right? You look at the last 2 years, they were picked to win their respective conferences, the Big 12 and the Pac-12 the year before that. And injuries to quarterback Cameron Rising ultimately derailed both of their seasons, and they posted 2 of the worst offenses in the power conferences each of the last 2 years. What I can guarantee with Devin Dampier and offensive coordinator Jason Beck coming in is that they will not have one of the worst offenses in the Big 12. If you look back at their time at New Mexico a season ago, they were the only offense in the country to produce 2,000-yard rushers, and Devin Dampier was one of them. So this is going to be a more productive offense. This is going to be a more explosive offense than what we've seen the past couple of years from Utah. And defensively, we know what they are. So to me, Utah might be the most interesting team in the Big 12 because of their boom or bust potential. If this offense works, if Devin Dampier is able to pass at a Big 12 quality level, this is a team that has the ability to jump up and contend for the Big 12. If he struggles, this once again may be a team that's fighting for bowl eligibility.
That's rough, and their schedule actually doesn't do them any favors. Just looking through it now, they play West Virginia, BYU, and Baylor on the road. They host Texas Tech, Arizona State, and Kansas State. It's not going to be an easy path for them. I want to ask about Texas Tech. You look at the money that they spent. They really are using their NIL funding to become contenders in the Big 12. It was an all-time transfer portal class this offseason. How much does the hype match up to what we hope to see out on the field?
Well, first of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't say to go check out my feature over at cbssports.com on Texas Tech. But what I will say about this team is that I think that they approach the transfer portal as smart as just about anybody in the country. Yeah, there were teams that, of course, got good quarterbacks, good wide receivers, but where Texas Tech really wanted to improve themselves was in the trenches, especially on the defensive side of the ball. This was a top 15 offense last year. This was a bottom 10 defense last year, and they brought in players like David Bailey from Stanford, Romello Height from Georgia Tech, Cole Wiskowski from North Dakota State, who are going to be big-time contributors for them. And on the offensive side of the ball, they brought in multiple players who are top 50 transfers along the offensive line, led by Howard Sampson. So this is a team that wanted to be built from the ground up, and this is the most talented roster in the Big 12. I don't think anybody could really argue that at this point. So they have legitimate expectations of winning the Big 12 and at least being in Arlington at the end of the year.
They also have 2 new coordinators, so you see how that system all gets put together. You look at our next team, a strong finish in 2024 proved that Baylor, they were ready to go and looking forward to an even stronger 2025. They find themselves among the contenders in what seems to be like a very balanced, chaotic season once again for the Big 12 Conference. Baylor does have the talent, though, to contend. They got their senior quarterback in Sawyer Robertson. What do you expect from them?
Well, for me, I was fascinated to see how they would handle this offseason, even just from, by the way, an NIL perspective, because they had 3 pieces on offense that were so critical to their success. You mentioned Sawyer Robertson at quarterback, who I think is one of the most underrated players in the country. Running back Bryson Washington, who was the Big 12's best running back last year. And then offensive coordinator Jake Spavital. Those 3 came together, and all 3 are back in 2025 now. The question for Baylor in terms of whether they can become a Big 12 contender and make the college football playoff is going to come down to their defense, though. They've made some big changes on that side of the ball, bringing in Paul Gonzalez as a secondary coach, and we saw improvement in the second half of the year from them on defense. We need to see even more of it in 2025, but this team has all the talent and all the pieces to be right there at the end of the year.
When it comes to BYU, we have a little bit of a legal situation going on. So instead of returning their senior quarterback coming off an 11-win season, the Cougars are now finding themselves in a tough spot trying to figure out who's going to be their QB. And it's just 2 months before the season starts. So what happens over there with BYU?
Yeah, this is such a fascinating situation from a football perspective, because when you look at Jake Retzlaff, he wasn't necessarily one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 last year, but he was one of the most important players in the Big 12 last year because of his explosive ability on the offensive side of the ball. And with that gone, they really have to find it in some other places. Now, I'm really high on running back LJ Martin to be a breakout player in college football, and this is a staff on defense that has just done an incredible job. They were top 5 pass defense for most of last season, but quarterback is going to be a big question for them. They have 2 players who have played FBS football before. McKay Hillstead, who started 4 games for Utah State in 2023, and Trayson Bourget, who played as a backup at Western Michigan that same season. But none have played major snaps against power conference competition. And if this is a unit in a position group that ultimately takes a huge step back, it's hard for me to see BYU having enough offense to keep up with the rest of the Big 12.
A lot of question marks when it comes to BYU, that's for sure. Last but not least, and I'm actually proud of us for putting this topic last in this discussion, because I think there's so much to be said about Colorado, Coach Prime out there. This is the first time Deion Sanders is going to be without his sons. So just the emotional aspect of it and what we can expect to see from Colorado this year. And then, you mentioned the sons. So Shedeur Sanders is out, but also losing a talent like Travis Hunter as well. What do you expect out of this Colorado team this year?
I think the most interesting part of Colorado this year is that for the first time, essentially, as a college coach, Deion Sanders is going to have a quote-unquote normal football team. And he has been very upfront about the fact that he wanted to get into coaching for the opportunity to help support his sons, and he included Travis Hunter in that. Shedeur's gone, Shiloh Sanders is gone, Travis Hunter now gone. But they still have a lot of good talent left. They bring in Caden Salter from Liberty, who 2 years ago was a tremendous player, had a little bit of a rough 2024. 2024. And they also bring in Julian Lewis, a really highly touted quarterback recruit. But I think that actually the story of this team may be on the defensive side of the ball, where Jaheim Otis from Alabama now mans the middle of that Colorado defensive line. And that defense, I would argue, coordinated by Robert Livingston, was kind of the story of the 2024 season as they got to nine wins at Colorado. So I don't think that this is going to be a precipitous drop-off, but what I'm fascinated by is how Deion Sanders and the roster as well handles the moment of not necessarily being as star-studded as they were in 2023 and 2024, but maybe a little bit deeper and more talented as a roster overall.
Do you think the drama is going to still follow him, though? That's the question. Is the media going to be all over him still?
Well, I can assure you of that. I remember last year at Big 12 Media Days, there were just cameras. You knew exactly where Deion Sanders was because of where all the cameras were last year. So that certainly will be the case this year. He's the biggest celebrity in the Big 12, maybe the biggest in college football, you could argue. But I think it's going to be really interesting, too, when you look at these next 2 days. How does Colorado try to market their new roster? They had some implicit advantages with Shedeur being a big star, with Travis Hunter being a Heisman-level talent. They got good guys. Jordan Seaton is a left tackle who I think will be an NFL player someday. Draylon Miller at receiver. Jaheim Otis, who I mentioned, coming from Alabama. But they don't have the guys with millions of followers on Twitch the same way that they did last year. They don't have the guys that everybody will be tuning in every Saturday to watch. I'm fascinated to see how they decide to market this team and this roster. And if there's one thing I know about Deion Sanders, he's going to find a way.
I was going to say he's going to figure it out one way or another. Shehan, I know you're going to be at Big 12 Media Days. We look forward to catching up with you afterwards. Can't wait to see how it goes. Thanks for joining us here on HQ, getting us ready for the Big 12 and college football. You take a look at this list right here. The Big 12 could be the most wide open league again this season. There's just so many talented teams. There's not really one or two that shine so far above the rest. A year after Arizona State and Iowa State played in the Big 12 title after ending their season in a four-way tie with BYU and Colorado. Look at the co-favorites. We got Kansas State, Utah, Arizona State, and right after that, Baylor and Texas Tech.